You call it going to work. You leave one place, you travel to another, and for a fixed number of hours, you become a different version of yourself. Employee, professional, someone whose time now belongs to someone else's schedule. It feels like the most natural arrangement in the world. Wake up, work, come home, repeat. But here's the strange part. For nearly the entire existence of our species, that arrangement didn't exist at all. Not the job, not the commute, not even the idea that a portion of your day belongs to something called work, separate from the rest of your life. So what did ancient humans actually do all day before work was even a category of existence? Let's find out what a day looked like before anyone invented the job. Start with the concept itself, because work, as you understand it, isn't really a timeless human universal. It's a relatively recent invention. Anthropologist James Suzman, who spent years living with and studying the Juhwansi, a hunter-gatherer people in southern Africa, has spent much of his career arguing exactly this. Suzman's research suggests that the modern idea of work, a defined block of time separated from leisure, performed for someone else, in exchange for wages, simply didn't exist for the vast majority of human history. Not because ancient people were lazy, and not because they didn't do anything, because their days weren't divided that way in the first place. Here's where it gets stranger. If you'd followed a hunter-gatherer around for an entire day, tens of thousands of years ago, you wouldn't have seen a clear line between working and not working at all. You'd have seen a single continuous flow of activity: foraging, tool-making, cooking, childcare, conversation, rest, moving seamlessly into each other without any of the categories you'd recognize. Anthropologist Marshall Salins, in his influential work on hunter-gatherer societies, described something that still unsettles people when they hear it. Groups he studied often spent only a few hours a day on activities directly tied to getting food, and the rest of their time wasn't spent recovering from exhaustion. It was spent on things that don't fit neatly into either work or leisure, as you'd define them. Repairing a tool while talking with a friend, watching children while processing gathered plants, teaching a skill to a younger member of the group while walking somewhere else entirely. None of that maps onto a modern job description, and none of it maps onto a modern vacation either. It's something else. A kind of undivided task-based existence where survival, relationship, skill, and rest all happened at once, tangled together instead of scheduled into separate boxes. This is worth sitting with for a moment. Your instinct might be to translate ancient activity into modern terms. Hunting was their job. Gathering was their job. Childcare was unpaid labor. But that translation actually distorts what was happening. It imposes a structure onto ancient life that ancient life simply didn't have. There was no clock to punch, no manager evaluating performance, no hour that belonged to an employer instead of to yourself. The very idea of your time being owned by anyone other than you and your immediate community hadn't been invented yet. So what filled an ancient day, if not work and leisure? A lot of it was ordinary maintenance. Tool-making took real time and skill, chipping stone into useful shapes, weaving fiber into cordage, repairing a container or a garment. Foraging and hunting took time too, but usually far less than modern imagination assumes, and it wasn't performed with the grim, obligatory feeling you associate with a job. It was simply what needed doing that day, folded into everything else happening around it. A significant chunk of the day, especially once basic needs were handled, went towards something researchers have only recently started studying seriously: conversation. Anthropologist Polly Wiessner spent years recording and analyzing the actual content of conversations among the Juhwansi, comparing what people talked about during the day to what they talked about once night fell and everyone gathered around a fire. Her research, published in the early 2000s, found something remarkable. Daytime conversation tended to focus on practical matters, complaints, coordination, gossip about immediate concerns, but firelight conversation in the evening shifted dramatically towards storytelling, myth, and shared cultural knowledge, the kind of talk that builds and reinforces a community's collective memory and imagination. In other words, a huge, essential part of the ancient day wasn't spent producing anything you could point to. It was spent maintaining the social fabric that made everything else possible, through stories, through myth, through simply being present with other people once the sun went down and no other task remained. Try imagining that as a category,